안녕하세요. 여러분의 한국어 선생님 고빌입니다. So last time I made a video analyzing the Korean abilities of Sana and Momo from the K-pop group Twice. And this time I'm going to focus on the other two non-native Korean-speaking members of Twice, Mina and Tzuyu, or better known by her Korean name, Tzuyu. And I'm going to analyze how both Mina and Tzuyu speak Korean, including what they do well, how they could improve, and everything between. But first, if you'd like to see more videos like this, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe. So let's get started. For those of you who are new to this channel, I am a Korean teacher. I am not a native Korean speaker. I can speak fluent Korean, but I'm not perfect or even close to perfect. So I'm not going to be able to give a flawless analysis of their Korean, nor will I be able to catch every mistake that they make, but I will do my best. All right, first let's talk about Mina. Unlike Sana and Momo, who I talked about before, Mina was actually born in the US in 1997. But she moved to Kobe, Japan as a child, so we can assume that her native language is Japanese. And Mina moved to Korea in 2014 at the age of 17, so 1 year later than both Sana and Momo. You might not think that 1 year makes a big difference, but when it comes to learning languages through immersion, the earlier the better. And often, people who are able to just live in a country from a young age, such as before they're a teenager, tend to end up speaking that language more like a native. So each year can still make a big difference. However, unlike Sana and Momo, Mina only had 1 year to learn Korean before Twice debuted in 2015. Okay, so then how does Mina speak Korean? Let's watch our first clip.
두 번째 음식은 미나의 파스타입니다.
그냥 심플하게 며느리 파스타.
무슨 파스타예요?
며느리 미나 파스타. 로제 파스타요. 토마토랑 크림이랑 섞었어요. 괜찮아요?
하나도 안 느끼해.
뭔가 크림만 하면은 좀 느끼할까봐 토마토랑 반반으로 했어요.
하나도 안 느끼해.
진짜요?
그지?
다행이다. 저는 뭔가 처음부터 끝까지 그냥 혼자 그냥 아무 말도 안 하고 그냥 이렇게 제거 이렇게
맞아.
다 준비하고 이렇게 기다렸다가 다 그냥 한 것 같은데 이렇게 어머니도 맛있다고 다 먹어주고
최고예요.
너무 기분이 좋아요. 그렇게 한 게 없는데.
This clip was from 2016, so just 1 year after Twice debuted. And here the members are all making food for each other, and Mina chooses to make a cream pasta. Everyone seems to really enjoy the pasta, and Mina's happy to hear that, so here's what she replies.
괜찮아요?
하나도 안 느끼해.
뭔가 크림만 하면은 좀 느끼할까봐 토마토랑 반반으로 했어요.
하나도 안 느끼해.
진짜요?
그지?
다행이다.
I can't find any grammar mistakes in Mina's Korean here. She starts to say something else at the beginning and then changes what she says, but the way she does it is a very natural and native sounding way to do that.
뭔가 크림만 하면은 좀 느끼할까봐 토마토랑 반반으로 했어요.
She says, 뭔가 크림만 하면은. Something I hear a lot of beginners learning Korean do when they're trying to talk and they change what they want to say is they'll make a lot of ums or sounds, or maybe they'll try to say it in Korean. They'll say 잠깐만, so 1 second, or 기다려, wait, like that. But these sort of things are not natural in Korean. Instead, like Mina does, if you want to change what you're talking about, but you've just started talking about something else, just pause for a second and then restate it without saying anything else.
뭔가 크림만 하면은 좀 느끼할까봐 토마토랑 반반으로 했어요.
Or, and this isn't what Mina did, but if you want to stop what you're talking about and cancel what you said and change to say something else, this would be like in English saying, oh wait, I mean. Well, in Korean, you can just say no. And this would be with your close friends, 아니, meaning no. Or if you're in a more polite situation, you can say 아니요. Or you could even say 죄송합니다. I'm sorry if you're in a very formal situation and you said something wrong. Also in this clip, at the start of her sentence, she uses another native sounding word, 뭔가.
뭔가 그림
This word 뭔가 literally means something, but it can also be used just as an adverb or even almost like a filler word to mean somewhat or kind of. So she starts off her sentence, which she ends up changing, by saying 뭔가 크림이.
뭔가 그림
You know, cream is kind of, but then she changes her mind and says something else. And this short clip demonstrates to me that Mina is actually thinking in Korean because she's able to change what she wants to say on the fly. She wasn't thinking about what she wanted to say while the other members were talking to her, and that's really impressive. And now, while her grammar and expressions are very natural sounding, some of her pronunciation, it sounds a little bit separated, like she's not blending the syllables properly. And some of her sounds are more with a Japanese pronunciation than Korean. For example, in this clip, pay attention to how she says the words cream and tomato.
뭔가 그림만 하면은 좀 느끼할까봐 토마토랑 반반으로 했어요.
Instead of saying krim, the Korean word for cream, she says it more like krim, which is actually closer to the Japanese pronunciation of this word, kurimu. And instead of tomato for tomato, she says it like tomato, kind of like individual syllables, instead of as one smooth word.
뭔가 그림만 하면은 좀 느끼할까봐 토마토랑 반반으로 했어요.
But I don't think a native Korean speaker would notice this or even mind, since it's close enough. Anyway, there is one more thing in this clip I want to point out.
저는 뭔가 처음부터 끝까지 그냥 혼자 그냥 아무 말도 안 하고 그냥 이렇게 제거 이렇게 다 준비하고 이렇게 기다렸다가 다 그냥 하는 것 같아요. 그런데 이렇게 어머니도 맛있다고 다 먹어가지고
최고예요.
너무 기분이 좋아요. 저렇게 한 게 없는데.
First of all, she's making a super long run-on sentence here, but I think the reason is just because she's nervous because the other members seem to be really enjoying the pasta she made. But I've been watching so many clips of Twice this past week that I almost didn't notice, actually, that they're all speaking in Korean with each other, even the ones who are non-native. For example, Mina, as well as Sana and Momo, all speak Japanese, but even in clips where they're alone with each other, they're only using Korean. Some of you might think this is obvious. I mean, they're in Korea. The other members are native speakers. Of course they would be speaking in Korean with each other. But if you've lived in Korea before or talk with someone who has, you'll find out that's not the case at all. It's common for people who move to Korea to live there that the first thing they do is they'll search out groups of people who can speak their native language, kind of like a support system of friends. Because of this, the majority of people who live in Korea, even after years, still aren't fluent in Korean because of this. Now, many K-pop groups have rules that their members must only speak in Korean with each other, and I think that those rules work. Now, there are great Korean classes out there, and books, and tips for studying, and lots of YouTube channels like mine, but really, learning a language all comes down to how much are you using that language. So because K-pop members have to speak in Korean as part of their training, they end up learning Korean. And if anyone out there now is watching this and you live in Korea and you're feeling like your Korean's not getting better as quickly as you'd like, it all boils down to that one thing. How much are you actually using Korean on a regular basis? That's it. Okay, let's look at our next clip, which is more recent from 2020, and it's Mina taking a personality test.
오늘은 저의 MBTI 테스트를 해보도록 하겠습니다. 저는 ISFPT가 나왔습니다. 현실주의형 84%. 너무 현실적인 사람인가? 내가? 아침에 일어났을 때랑 잘 때랑 다른 사람이에요. 어떡해. 원수분들 재밌게 봐주셨으면 좋겠습니다. 원수 여러분 다 해보세요.
I picked this clip because I wanted to hear how her Korean has changed since 2016, and I can hear some differences right off the bat. So what's better? Her speed. In her clips from 2016, she wasn't speaking slowly, but now it seems she has gained a lot of confidence in her speaking. In some earlier clips, I pointed out how it sounded like she was pronouncing some sounds as individual syllables, but I can't detect that anymore. And since this clip is just Mina speaking without much editing or anyone talking over her, I can also hear her pronunciation a lot more clearly. And I can hear some areas for improvement. So let's listen to this part again.
아침에 일어났을 때랑 잘 때랑 다른 사람이에요. 어떡해.
The pronunciation here should be 일어났을 때, 때. But what Mina says is actually closer to 일어났을 때, 일어났을 때, 때, kind of like that.
아침에 일어났을 때랑 잘 때랑 다른 사람이에요.
So these double consonants and strong consonants can be really difficult to distinguish. 태, 때. It's a very small but still important difference. And it's a little bit jarring to hear 태 instead of 때.
어떡해.
And the same thing can be heard here. This word should be pronounced as 어떻게, but she says it more like 어떻게.
어떡해.
And this again is the difference between a regular consonant, here, 더, and a double consonant, 더, 어떻게.
어떡해.
Now, I've seen other clips of Mina, and she does know how to pronounce these sounds. She knows how they're different. So this isn't really a critique of her knowledge of Korean. It's just how she happened to use it in this clip. But sometimes, and I do this too, if I'm surprised or caught off guard, or if you just get nervous, it can be hard to focus on speaking Korean. Instead, you just sort of focus on getting out what you want to say as quickly as possible. So I think that's all this is, just a bit of nervousness. So I wouldn't take off any points for this. Okay, there's one more clip I have from back in 2016, and I'm just sharing it with you because it's funny. Here, it's Twice taking a quiz to grade their Korean, and they're trying to guess the meaning of a Korean idiom. So the host asks them to fill in the blank for a popular Korean idiom. So let's watch the clip.
다음 문제입니다. 원수는 땡땡에서 만난다. 원수는 길에서 만날 수 있지요. 길에서 만날 수 있어요. 길에서 만날 수 오케이, 아주 설득력 있었습니다.
The idiom is originally 원수는 외나무 다리에서 만난다. Literally, this means you meet your enemies at a one log bridge, just a bridge that's only one wooden log. This idiom is used to say that when you encounter bad luck or a person you don't want to deal with, well, it'll be in a situation where you can't just go around them or ignore them. And that's because two people can't cross a single log bridge at a time. So the members of Twice were all trying to guess this idiom, where you would meet your enemies. And Mina guesses 길, so on the street.
원수는 길에서 만난다. 만날 수 있지요. 길에서 만날 수 있죠. 길에서 만날 수 있어요. 길에서 만나죠. 오케이.
길에서 is like saying when you're out and about or just on the way somewhere, just on the streets. So yeah, it's not the right answer, but it's plausible. And now the hosts knew that these girls wouldn't know the correct answer because it's kind of an advanced idiom, and they just wanted to see what sort of funny answers they'd try to give. So good job, Mina. Now the other members also gave kind of funny answers too. First of all, Tzuyu replied with this.
원수는 화장실에 화장실에서 어떻게 만나요? 맞아. 너 화장실로 와. 이렇게.
This one is also a really good answer. In English, we have the expression, let's take this out back or let's take this outside when you're going to fight someone. And in Korean, they have a similar expression, but instead they say, let's go to the bathroom. 화장실, meaning bathroom. So now we've done the 3 Japanese-speaking members of Twice, and that leaves us with our final non-native Korean-speaking member, Tzuyu. She was born in Taiwan, so her native language is going to be Chinese. Also, interestingly, when Tzuyu moved to Korea in 2012, so the same year as Sana and Momo, Tzuyu was only 13 years old. So in theory, she could speak Korean better than anyone else in Twice. But how is she actually? Well, let's watch our first clip.
겨드랑 이까지 한 단어인데 겨드랑 아니 얘는 겨드랑 아니 나 겨드랑이 이 단어 안 배웠어 한 번도 말을 안 했어 그거는 알아 지금
겨드랑. I just picked this video first because it's funny. Here she's trying to say the word 겨드랑이, which means armpit. But what she keeps saying, I guess, is 겨드랑, which isn't a word that's used. It's just funny.
아니 나 겨드랑이 이 단어 안 배웠어
This is actually a very easy mistake to make because if someone heard the word 겨드랑이 and didn't know what it meant, it would be easy to assume that the word was 겨드랑 plus E, the subject marker, which is E after a consonant or ka after a vowel. So 겨드랑 E. However, 겨드랑이 by itself is already the word. So if you were to add the subject marker to it, it would become 겨드랑이가. And also in this clip, Tzuyu explains herself. She tells them why she didn't know this word, which is pretty funny too. Okay, so let's talk about Tsuyu's actual Korean abilities. Here is a clip, a serious clip from 2019 from an interview.
안녕하세요. 트와이스 저의 별명은 쯔멍이 그리고 요다입니다.
요다?
여기 오기 전에 한 일은 빵을 먹었다. 빵.
Just hearing her say bang twice like that is really funny. First, she says that she ate bread before she went to the interview. And then after the question is, what's your favorite food? And she also replies, bread. Bang.
빵.
Okay, so let's get serious.
저의 별명은 쯔멍이 그리고 요다입니다.
Wait, did she just say her nickname is Yoda? Like Yoda from Star Wars? What? Let's talk about Tsuyu's Korean. She sounds great, and it's easy to understand everything that she's saying. Then what can she improve? Well, her pronunciation. I've only studied Chinese for maybe 6 months in total, so I'm not too familiar with the intonation or pronunciation. I can only guess that her issues with pronunciation in Korean are a result of her native Chinese language. For example, in this part.
저의 별명은
The sound she's having trouble with is the iung. And in the last episode, I also talked about how Sana had some trouble pronouncing the same letter.
엉, 덩, 이, 엉덩이.
Usually, when someone's not able to pronounce this letter perfectly, it comes out sounding like an N. What she's trying to say here is 저의 별명은.
저의 별명은
The iung letter has an ng sound when it's at the end of a syllable. So here, 별명, 명. But she pronounces it more like 별명은. So with an n sound instead of that ng sound.
저의 별명은
I know that Chinese has an ng sound, but I don't think they have an ng sound followed by a vowel. Because it's not just saying 별명. Here it's 별명 plus the topic marker 은. So 별명은, 별명은. Here she has to make this ng sound, which is a difficult sound for beginners to make, also flowing into an sound, which is another difficult sound to make. 별명은, 별명은, 명은, 명은.
저의 별명은
It's 99% there, and she's definitely fluent. But usually what gives it away to me if someone's a native speaker is their ability to blend syllables and sounds together. Because this is the hardest thing to get 100% perfect. And believe me, I've been studying Korean for over 15 years and I'm still not perfect. It's really hard to get right. So then how can someone get over this and sound more like a native? It's just more practice, more conversation, more speaking with native Korean speakers, and trying to repeat back exactly what you hear in your head when you're speaking. Now, I know that I will never sound 100% exactly like a native, but that's okay. That's not even my goal. My Korean right now is noticeably better than it was even a few years ago, so I know that I'm improving. And I'm sure that if we were to look at clips of all of these girls speaking in Korean a few years later, we will also be able to see big improvements. Okay, so here's our next totally serious clip of Tzuyu speaking Korean.
정말 한국 문화도 많이 배우게 돼서 그리고 잘 챙겨주셔서 정말 감사합니다. 오늘은 정말 지겨웠어요. 지겨웠어요. 아주
Okay, I tricked you. This was just another funny clip of Tzuyu speaking Korean and making a mistake from 2018. Here she was trying to say 오늘 정말 즐거웠어요. Today was very enjoyable. But what she actually said by mistake was a similar sounding word, 지겨웠어요.
감사합니다. 오늘은 정말 지겨웠어요.
즐겁다 means to be enjoyable, and it would be conjugated here in the past tense as 즐거웠어요. It was enjoyable. 지겹다, however, means that something is really boring and you're sick of it. So 지겨웠어요.
정말 지겨웠어요.
So she basically said today was so tiring and boring, but she's not wrong. The thing is, these programs that you watch on Korean TV, 20 minutes or 40-minute shows, they can take all day to film. There was a certain popular Korean TV show. I won't say the name. It was a 1-hour show and they would film from 6 a.m. until past midnight. And in this short clip, they were probably sitting there filming for up to an hour. And I think that when Tzuyu said this, that the other people listening at the table thought just for a second that she was making a joke until they realized that she just said it wrong. Or maybe that's what Tzuyu was really thinking and it just slipped out accidentally. Yeah.
정말 지겨웠어요.
But Tzuyu, these sorts of mistakes aren't anything to worry about and they make funny stories later. Okay, our last serious clip of Tzuyu is from 2020, so it's the most recent clip, and here she's taking a MBTI personality test.
네, 안녕하세요. 찰스입니다. 저는 지금 MBTI 검사하러 왔습니다. 감정의 기복이 심할 때가 있습니다. 사람들이 저를 보면 되게 로봇이라고 하잖아요. 조금 저도 약간 그렇게 심하지 않은 거, 심하는 편 아닌 것 같아요. 감정이 이렇게 왔다 갔다 하는 사람 아닌 거. ISFP A 성격 유형 호기심 많은 예술가 무책임하고 무모한 행동을 일삼을 수 있다는 것을 그들 자신 역시 잘 알고 있습니다. 그런가요? 그런가?
So Tzuyu is talking about her personality, and I just want to make this clear. This is not in any way a beginner topic. This is totally different than a celebrity introducing themselves in Korean or talking about their hobbies or their favorite food or anything like that. This is on a completely different level. Topics that are about not just describing something, but also explaining your position on something tend to require much more advanced Korean. So we can hear her in this clip struggling a bit to express herself, but I just want you to keep that in mind that this is very much an advanced level topic. Now, Tzuyu is an advanced speaker, and she is able to express herself in a lot of different ways, but I was able to find some grammar mistakes in this clip here.
조금 저도 약간 그렇게 심하지 않은 거, 심하는 편 아닌 것 같아요. 감정이 이렇게 왔다 갔다 하는 사람 아닌 거.
Here she says, 심하는 편 아닌 것 같아요. And the verb she's using here is 심하다, which is a descriptive verb that means to be strong or severe. However, the conjugation she uses with this, 심하는, would only be correct if it were an action verb and not a descriptive verb.
심하는 편 아닌 것 같아요.
And that's because in Korean, action verbs and descriptive verbs can sometimes conjugate differently, especially if they're being used to describe something. Action verbs can conjugate this way with 는. So if you had the verb 하다, to do, it can become 하는, or 먹다, to eat, 먹는. However, descriptive verbs, when they're describing something, like in this sentence, instead conjugate by attaching 은 after the verb stem if it ends in a consonant, or attaching just a nian if the verb stem ends with a vowel, with a few exceptions. So what Tzuyu should have said is 심한 편, since 심하다 is being used to describe 편.
심하는 편 아닌 것 같아요.
Conjugating action verbs and descriptive verbs like this is actually quite a large topic because it requires knowing several additional rules and exceptions. But that's why it's really important when you're learning a new verb to pay attention to whether it's an action verb or a descriptive verb. And there's one more part of this clip that I want to point out, and that has to do with her pronunciation.
무책임하고 무모한 행동을 일삼을 수 있다는 것을 그들 자신 역시 잘 알고 있습니다.
I mentioned her pronunciation of the letter iung. Well, we can still hear that same thing. Listen again to how she says the word 행동, meaning action.
무책임하고 무모한 행동을 일삼을 수 있다는 것을
Now, this word should be pronounced 행동, but she pronounces it kind of like 행동. And I'm not pointing this out to say that Tzuyu has not improved. No, she has a lot. I wanted to emphasize how hard it can be to change pronunciation mistakes once you've gotten accustomed to making them. So while this is a more recent clip from 2020, she could still work a bit on her pronunciation of this letter, iung.
무모한 행동을
So Tzuyu, just focus on this one letter for me, and maybe I'll make another video about you in the future. You are awesome. Okay, we finished reviewing the Korean of Sana, Momo, Mina, and Tzuyu, all four of the non-native Korean speakers in the K-pop group Twice. What do you think? And who would you like to see me review next? Please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time. 그럼 다음에 또 봐.